Well, it's the 17th of October and I'm somewhere different. Same light, different place. I'm in Sherwood Forest for the first time since about 2014. And by the looks of it, the first moth is in. But how long this session lasts, I have no idea. Because as you may be able to tell from that, it's raining. And it's an early start, and it's turned into a wet one. It started to rain, but we'll just finish setting up, see what happens. Well, the rain stopped. Didn't come down too heavy, but it wouldn't have been much fun if it had persisted. It certainly wasn't heavy enough to stop moths from flying. And then at the moment, something else has just come in, but we've got a chestnut in and a common marble carpet out of the light somewhere. There's another moth that has been in, which I've got to look up. But for those that know Sherwood Forest, this was always my own favoured spot, easy to get to. You weren't in the forest long as a November moth in by the looks of it. And just at what we used to call the dump, which is where anything that would be burnt would be burnt. But had great variety of invertebrates, likely to because there was some rank vegetation here. So it allowed species that you wouldn't get elsewhere in the forest to colonise this spot. And it turned up some goodies. So I best see what these moths are that's just come in. It's quite nice to be trapping back in the forest. We're not in the proper bit of the forest with all the big trees. Doesn't really warrant it this time of year, to be honest. Next summer there could be some interesting moth trapping videos. Some might be worth watching. Well, the rain's started to come down again. Nothing heavy, but the moths are coming in. And we've got several chestnuts knocking around now. There's a red-green carpet just on the left-hand corner, towards the left-hand corner of the sheet, and what looks like another November moth, and there's been a silver Y in as well, which is almost certainly locally bred, but who knows, conditions are actually good for migrants today and tonight and tomorrow. But something other than silver Y would be most welcome. But you can see now actually the number of moths that are already in. I mean, this is nothing compared to summer months. We've had well over 1,000 moths within 2 hours, and then we've packed up quite happy trapping for 2 hours. And but bear in mind now we're in the second week of October. Well, yeah, just about we're in the third week of October now, actually, 17th. And there'll be many more moths coming in. And I best have a walk round to see what we have got in. tell you if it was. That was a red-green carpet that briefly settled on the fingers. That's 2 red-green carpets in there. And this is just an Agonopteryx. Presumably a Rattliana. But the rain continues. Well, the rain's stopped again. It's incredibly mild, 15 centigrade at the moment, which is good, obviously, for October, for middle of October. The next tomorrow night is probably going to be even warmer, but it looks as though it might be wetter. But there's enough to keep us interested here. More moths will come in. The November moths haven't really started to come in yet. I expect a decent count of those because it's the commonest moth this time of year really now. May even get the first December moth, although they're usually one of the first in at the light, December moths. Quite often, as soon as you switch it on. And there's only the merest hint of a breeze here. That's one good thing about this spot, it is sheltered. That's one good thing really about Sherwood Forest in the country part. You can always find somewhere that's sheltered. And one night we'll trap against some famous big tree that there is here. There's 1 or 2 Aphodius roof heaps that are coming in. And Aphodius roof heaps is the commonest of the Aphodius, which is dung beetles that turn up at light. Even get them at home. It's a very common species. It's a large species, fairly large species as well for an Aphodius. And thankfully so far, no hornets. That's one of the problems in late summer, but especially autumn, September and October. And if you're trapping in woodland, at least you get an indication within about 3 minutes of putting the light on whether you're going to be inundated with hornets or not. And so far, not had one. But this was the location where a fly went down into my ear and remained there till it ever came out, if it did. Which was a weird sensation, have something buzzing inside your head. Which is often what I do when I think. That's why I don't think I do. But yeah, that was an interesting experience. That was. Fly went down my ear. We left here about 1 o'clock in the morning, and about 3:45 in the morning we were still at A&E, and I gave up. I said, look, I'm going to have to go because I've got to get up for work. It did eventually stop buzzing, but it was at the same night, and that was when I had the hornet that went down my t-shirt, or just started to go down my t-shirt. But I was unscathed and lived to see another day. And I best get up off my knees and see what's come in. There's a couple of bits come in. But it's very pleasant. Especially now it's not wet. Here's a common moth of the later months in the year. And in the spring, this is a satellite, and it's called a satellite. Well, that joining it is a December moth. So there's a satellite just being disturbed very kindly by a December moth. But the satellite, if I can rest my, it has 2 main dots on each, well, 1 on each wing. Then either side of that dot is 2 smaller dots. Hence the term satellite, which is in effect like 2 moons orbiting a parent planet. Now the spots can be anything from pure white, as in this case, through to orange. And it's a very attractive moth actually, especially when seen when fresh. Right, now I'm going to try and show you a December moth which has settled on my shoulder. And here's a December moth. It's finally settled now, and they are quite an attractive moth. They belong to the Lassicampidae family, which features other species like oatcaker, fox moth, etc. And despite the name, December moth will fly from October and right through. We've had them well into January in one winter, but that was when we had a really hard wintry spell in December, which sort of stopped everything. It would have flown in December, and then when it became mild again in January, the moths were still there to fly. But an attractive moth. The males, if I can show you, have very feathery antennae. Of course, the antennae are used for finding and detecting females. Female moths release a scent called a pheromone, if you didn't know. Or for those of you that don't know, that aren't mothers. The females have a plain antenna, whereas the males are heavily filamented like this, and that helps the male to detect the female's pheromones from considerable distances. It's amazing. But a nice moth, and a sign that winter is on its way. Perhaps. We hardly have winters now. Well, the moths are steadily coming in. Not doing bad for species. I think we're on about 10 species at the moment. Have had December moth in. Mostly it's red-green carpets. Just into double figures for those now. There's the odd November moth starting to flitter in from the left as you look at the light. 3 satellites in, a nice micro moth, Hypsipygia costalis, which I'll probably insert a picture somewhere around here. There comes another November moth joining the party. Been plagued by rain, unfortunately, and I nearly considered packing up. It's just more of a nuisance. I wish it would either rain or not rain. Yeah, simple as that. I mean, rain doesn't stop moths from flying at all unless it's absolutely torrential. The moth fluttering around this side of the light near the thermometer is the December moth, and I'll stick a picture in that. And you're probably thinking, well, if it's flying now in middle of October, why is it called a December moth? Which is a good question, I suppose, really. I mean, most November moths fly in October, and that is probably an indication, to be honest, how things have changed and the flight periods of moths have changed. It's becoming quite common now for your moths of early spring, species like spring usher is in classic case really, and pale brindle beauty. They're moths typically sort of February onwards, but now it's not unusual at all for both those species to start and be caught before Christmas. So presumably species like December moth, when they were named by the Victorian entomologists or whoever, there's another chestnut's just dropped in, but yeah, presumably 150 odd years ago, whatever, moths like December moth flew in December, and moths such as November moth flu in November. That's the logical way to think about it. That's how I think about it. I mean, why would you name something a December moth if it flew in September and October? Stands to reason, doesn't it? So things have changed. The flight times of moths have changed, and they've changed greatly in the last few years with the extremes of the weather that we have now. Flight times, given flight times in books, don't often mean a great deal, and you can't take them as being gospel anymore. And now with increasingly longer summers and warm periods in autumn, it's not unusual for species to have the odd second brood or a partial second brood, or even just the odd moth of any species to turn up completely out of season. Strange times. So what makes it interesting if you record things though, and you see these changes occurring over the year, and certainly over the course of a couple of decades, you'll see big changes in your records. Anyway, after all that waffling, I'm in need of a cup of tea, and I need to check just to make sure I've not missed anything interesting that's coming. And at least it's stopped raining. And there is said moon in the sky where it always is, but the cloud is breaking. It's certainly lifted, the cloud has. I don't think we're going to get any fog here, because this part of Sherwood Forest is a country park. It can, well, it's the lowest part, so it is prone to fog in here quite a bit. And with it being the lowest part of the country park, it's always the coolest on a night time here. And the Gleethorpe Open, which you'll have seen on all the videos, which is just over the trees at the back of me, and the moon is disappearing. So I think another cup of tea's in order. Something's dropping in. We'll see what that is, and we'll see what's in the old flask. Well, as it's gone quiet and the temperature's dropping a little bit and the sky's clearing, I'm going to pack up here and see what it's like when I get home, and probably have the light on there in view that there's the potential for migrants. You never know. But I'm quite happy. I've had an hour and a half. There's one thing, we can never be accused of over trapping a site. Yeah, we might have trapped, used to trap sites regular, sometimes several nights in succession, but not always at the same spot. But we never ran the trap for more than 4 hours really at any one time. Usually it was 2 or 3 hours, and then the moths had got the rest of the night. We'd caught enough moths, and the moths got the rest of the night to go about the business. So no one can ever say, you know, we trapped all night long and that's reducing the moth population. I've always been happy for a couple of hours or so, and if it had stayed cloudy and the moths had still been coming in, I'd have carried on. So I'll leave this running and start packing up. You thought I'd forgot this, didn't you? No.